Hello, everyone. This is Srinivasan, a fine art photographer, a distance skater. This is the very first time I'm meeting this wonderful gentleman, very kind person, as I have seen, and the only person who ride this wonderful board. You know, for distance skating especially. So we have Mr. Mark Gansbuehler here, known as Endurance Snaker. Let me not hold you guys longer, and let me hear it from this wonderful gentleman itself. Let me jump into the interview straight away. So, Mr. Mark, tell us about your self. Like people would like to know,
Yeah,
better
sure,
to
sure.
know, hear it from you.
Yeah,
Then.
well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Yes, I am Mark. I live slap bang in the centre of the UK. I work heading up a data analytics team for a commercial bank,
Mm-hmm.
which is all right.
Mm-hmm.
And I love anything that gets the heart racing. So motorbikes, snowboarding, I like running,
Mm-hmm.
football, and of course, endurance skating.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you like Triumph, is it?
I do have a Triumph, yeah. I mean, I don't have any particular passion for Triumph motorbikes
Uh huh.
over any other bike. It's just the type of bike I've got. I just happen to like. So yeah, it is a Triumph.
Awesome, awesome. So, what is your ride when it comes to distance skating, or as you put it, endurance skating? What do you call that board? The wave board or a wiggle board? What do you?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a bit of a story but behind the names. I guess there's two official names. So
Mm-hmm.
when it first started off, very back end of the 80s into the 90s, the brand was called a snakeboard. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a snakeboard.
Oh,
This is a 30-year-old board, which is what I
wow.
rode in Miami.
Uh huh.
And that was the brand. So they were known as snake boards because they move like a snake.
Oh.
That brand kind of fell away at the end of the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and then other brands came into play, kind of redesigned the boards, exactly the same concept, but just redesigned them.
Mm-hmm.
So the name transitioned into street boards,
Oh.
and I think that name is called a street board because they were initially invented to replicate the feel of snowboarding on the street. So
Okay.
rather than a snowboard,
Okay.
street board. So
Okay.
now they're more commonly known as a street board,
Awesome.
but because I've grown up with them as snakeboards, I still call it a snakeboard.
Oh, cool, cool. So, do you have any versions of these boards with you?
Yeah, so what I've just showed is the more traditional snake board, and then I've got a few street boards which I've kind of collected over the time. And as I say, this is my dragon one of my dragon boards. I've
Oh,
got
cool.
three of them.
Oh.
So it's exact. Although it looks very different, it's the same thing. You've got the center bar, you've got the foot plates. So if you can ride one, you can ride the other. It's exactly the same. So
Cool.
it's just a different design. I think they just because they're really designed for freestyle in the park.
Mm.
Because with the boards, because you never touch the ground, they're designed to take full bindings. So you strap yourself to the board like you would snowboard, and
Mm-hmm.
then replicate any of the kind of snowboard tricks in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why the newer boards have this more wider wider center bar to make it easier to lock in, like if you're grinding a rail or something like that. So
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
yeah, so that's the history.
That's cool. So, why this board for distance skating? How do you?
So I used to skateboard when I was a child,
Uh
and then
huh.
one day I saw skateboards on the television,
Uh
and
huh.
I just thought the idea of a board, especially at that time back in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
I thought the idea of a board that you never had to touch the ground,
Oh.
um, that you could strap yourself into and kind of replicate that snowboard feel. It just seemed like such a cool concept. So I begged my parents for one when I was a little kid back in the late 90s,
Uh huh.
and they were kind of to get me one. I just fell in love with it, and then yeah, I never went back to skateboarding after that. I just enjoyed riding snakeboards too much. Um, for long distance, they're not designed for it. As I say, they're really designed for the park, which is where anyone else who's got one typically tends to ride them.
Mm-hmm.
But it was during COVID that I got into the longer distance,
Mm-hmm.
because I hadn't even thought about snakeboards most of my adult life, and then
Mm-hmm.
COVID come along,
Mm-hmm.
looking for something to do because everything's closed. People getting into cycling. I tried that, but found it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit boring because you could only go out for an hour a day. So I thought, oh, do you know what? I'll get out my old snakeboard, give that a go. And then I was just riding it. 5K became 10, 10 became 20, and
Cool.
then I just kept building on the distance that I was doing, and that's kind of how I got into the longer distances.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How does it feel to be the only rider of this kind of board for distance skating? I think probably you are the only
Um,
one and found another, you know.
yeah, so I am the only one that's ever done it on a snakeboard. And I suppose it's like anything that's different in life. It's both good and bad. So
Mm-hmm.
it's good because it's nice to be unique sometimes, and it's a good way to meet people because people are usually quite interested or fascinated because they've either never seen them at
Mm-hmm.
all, or they've certainly never seen one at an ultra. So
Mm-hmm.
you get a lot of questions. People are kind of fascinated. Like, how does it work? Um, why are you riding this board? Can I have a go? So it's a good way to kind of meet people.
Awesome.
But then on the downside, I'm out there on my own. I've got no one to benchmark against because nobody rides these things
Yeah,
at a distance.
totally understandable.
I've got no one to kind of share best practice with or learn from.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not great in that respect because there's a real community around long distance skating with longboards, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't really. Although I can learn certain things from longboarding, I'm kind of limited. So I'm out there on my own, so that's not great, but it's better than it is bad. So yeah, it's good.
You are setting an example for many. That much I can tell you. I'm very much inspired from what you're doing because I started my skating with freelance skates. So uh, this is
Right.
this is inspiring for me actually. So I see you're a regular when you ride your board. Can you ride goofy as well?
Yeah, I can. I mean, the boards, unlike say more traditional longboards, they are designed as twin. So that means they ride exactly the same way either way because they're completely symmetrical.
Hmm.
I can ride goofy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as good as it as I should be, and I
Okay.
think that's something. I mean, I can do it pretty well, but nowhere near to the level that I can as a regular rider. And I
Okay.
think that's something I should really work on because in an endurance event,
Hmm.
being able to kind of switch the riding stance
Yeah.
and maintain the same kind of pace,
Yeah.
I think would really help because as you start to get fatigued, you could switch and
True.
then use slightly different muscles.
True.
So yeah, it's something I should work on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, your motorcycling, touring, and all that, like I saw you packing your, endurance board with your touring thing. Like, how does that happen? Like, you did this before distance skating as well, or like after distance skating?
Yeah, so I've ridden motorbikes about 15 years.
Uh huh.
So that and I say I only really got into long distance during COVID. So and if I can combine the two, then great. I can't do it as much as I'd like because the trouble with a motorbike is all the gear.
Yeah.
So I have if I'm going somewhere and I've got like a hotel or I'm staying with people
Mm-hmm.
so I can leave my stuff,
Mm.
then great. But I can't just ride out somewhere and go for a skate because what do you do with your bike helmet and your jacket and your boots? So
Yeah.
when I can combine it, I can, but it's not that often I can combine
Oh.
the two.
Oh, I understand. I understand. So, how does your knowledge of riding Scrambler, Scrambler, or Daytona, that knowledge transfer into distance skating?
Not really. There's because it's two completely different
Yeah.
things. I suppose there's an element of endurance in both because if you're, I've ridden around Europe a few times,
Wow.
and if you're in the saddle for 12 hours,
Uh,
that is hard going. That's
yeah.
tiring. So
Yeah.
there is an element of endurance to keep going on a motorbike.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's really transcended between the two
Mm-hmm.
is on a motorbike. It's very important to keep it well lubricated, as
Mm-hmm.
it is with a board.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and most motorcycle manufacturers will recommend using gearbox oil as a lubricant,
Mm-hmm.
and I use that on my boards, and it works
Wow.
great because it's cheap
Uh-huh.
compared to what you can how much you can buy, and how that will one bottle will last you a lifetime,
Yeah.
and it works amazingly well because it's so good at repelling water.
Mm.
So yeah, that's something
Synthetic
that's
oil?
kind of yeah, synthetic or proper oil. Either's fine.
Okay.
Gearbox oil. Its gearbox oil is a bit thicker than engine oil,
I
which is why
understand.
that's kind of recommended. But because I have a habit being in the UK, having to ride in the wet.
Yeah.
And whenever I post a video, there'll always be someone in the comments saying, "Oh, that's the end of your bearings." It's like, well, it's that's the good thing about the oil because if you ever put just a bit on your hand
Oh,
and
yeah.
try and wash it off with just water,
Mm.
that's going to take you a while. So it really does a great job at repelling water.
Yeah, whatever works. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Actually, it's a learning for us as well. Mr. Paul Kent, who is a distance skater as well, he had a a career in repairing motorcycling. So he put up a
Right.
video using some lubes of motorcycling into bearings,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
which transcended and helped him in Salah de Uyuni, or wherever he went. Salt water was there. So this is actually brilliant. Actually, bringing the knowledge of motorcycling thing into distance skating. Is there any
Yeah.
food habits which you had in motorcycling applied to distance skating?
Food habits? No, not so much because
Okay.
whilst motorcycling it can be tiring, but you're not exactly using much energy,
Yeah.
so you don't really have to worry about nutrition when you're riding a bike.
Mm-hmm.
Just stay, and you can't eat when you're riding because you've got a helmet on.
Obviously.
So, but no, it's not something you really need to think about.
Okay, cool. I understand from your Instagram feeds that you do, skiing. So
Yeah.
if you're going to, apply that knowledge for distance skating, how would that transcend?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly transcends because, as I said earlier, snakeboards were designed to replicate that feeling of snowboarding. So the
Mm-hmm.
two are quite similar in a lot of ways. For me, it's the other way around. So streetboarding transcends more into snowboarding
Wow.
simply because I did that first. So
Oh
when
yeah.
I learned to snowboard,
Mm-hmm.
I could already ride a snakeboard. So I picked snowboarding up really quickly compared to the friends I was learning with because it's the same kind of balance. You're using exactly the same muscle groups.
Oh,
Some of the techniques are very similar, and
awesome.
ultimately you're snaking your way down a mountain on a snowboard.
Yeah.
So it's the same sort of thing. There are a lot of differences as well,
Uh-huh.
but it certainly helps. And it's great because I streetboard. When I do go snowboarding,
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of mountain ready because I'm using exactly the same muscle groups. So it's
Cool.
a really good way to stay in shape for snowboarding.
That's awesome. So, is there any regular goofy kind of thing in skiing as well? Kind of.
Yeah. So because my stance is pretty much exactly the same as I would
Oh.
on either boards,
Mm-hmm.
and I also ride regular
Oh.
on snowboarding.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I can ride goofy, but not as good as I should. But yeah, it's great that the two are so similar.
Super cool. Awesome, sir. I understand from your Instagram feeds that you love bigger wheels, boa wheels. So, tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's less of a love of big wheels and more of a love of experimenting. So I like trying out different things to see what works better. There's also an element of necessity
Uh-huh.
because being in the UK, our pavements are poor quality. It's very busy for traffic.
Wow.
Our cycle infrastructure is non-existent, so you can't. There's no cycle lanes to make use of. So you need a big
Okay.
wheel to get over the terrain that we have to face in the UK because it's often quite bad. So
That's brave.
on smooth tarmac, you don't need such a big wheel,
I understand.
but in the UK, it just helps to get over those obstacles.
Cool. It'll be nice if they have any gravel riding kind of wheels for distance skating, won't they? Oh,
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, that's why these big boas are good over here in the UK because you can get over a lot of stuff with those, so they're
super
pretty
cool.
good.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's the maximum size that a snake boat can take.
I mean, that's one of the good things about a snakeboard is that you've got you can I mean, these are 90 millimeter wheels, and
Wow.
you can see there's still quite a big gap. So the most
Obviously.
I've got, the biggest wheel I've got is 107. I've got 107
Wow.
millimeter wheels, but I don't use those very often anymore because it just adds so much weight to the board,
Uh-huh.
um, which you don't really notice when you're riding, but just carrying the board around, it just makes it a bit too heavy.
Okay.
Um, and with a snake board, because you never touch the ground,
I
you
understand.
don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about how high off the ground you are. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. So you can put as big of a wheel on it as you want. The
Sure.
trucks are fixed, so you never have to worry about wheel bite because there's no heel to toe movement. So it's just fixed. Put as big a wheel on it as you want, and off you go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, how do you got accepted into Ultraskate events? Because like this question kind of came up when I saw some, feed on Facebook distance getting groups where they were talking about your, especially highlighting the snakeboard. Like they
Yeah,
were highlighting this exact question, like how you got accepted. So, I'm kind of presenting the same.
yes. So as I said, I started in COVID, and then at the time I was looking at social media groups around the longboarding community for kind of tips and things. And I was looking on YouTube, and then the it got the push documentary for the
Yeah,
documentary on the Miami Ultraskate
yeah.
just came up as a recommendation. So I thought, oh, so I watched that,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just blown away by people riding 100, 200, 300 miles and the community around it. I just thought, oh, I really like to give that a go
Cool.
one day on my snakeboard. So I just messaged the organisers. I said, look, I've got this weird board. Would you have any objections
Oh,
if I was to have a go? Because I didn't want to just register turn up with a different board because that would be a bit disrespectful. So I thought, well, I'll message them
oh,
and see what they say.
that's awesome.
So yeah, the Miami guys were great. They were like, yeah, no problem. Be great to see you there. So they said, oh, by the way, as you're in the UK, did you know there's one in Europe? I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So
Oh,
I found the details of the Dutch Ultraskate.
uh-huh.
Same thing. I messaged those guys.
Cool.
They were a little bit more reluctant because I think that the Dutch track is a lot narrower than
Yeah,
Miami. Like
yeah,
Miami's really wide,
yeah.
but I think they thought they were a bit worried that I'd be snaking all over the track.
Uh-huh.
But I sent them a video and said, well, actually, I don't take up any more space than
Cool.
somebody pumping on a longboard. So once they saw that, they're like, yeah, cool, come along. So yeah, that's how I kind of found it, and yeah, got that permission. Then just applied, and I just thought it's only fair to put myself in the standard category of the
Uh,
push pump. So that's what I did.
that's awesome. Because this your input and your answer is going to help a lot of people if they're going to adapt to snakeboard. That's why I'm putting this. Because like after this, your participation to Dutch Ultraskate event or Dutch or Ultraskate Miami, like have they have any intent to change the rules as in to include to stay inclusive of such things? New
I don't think so, and I don't think it's really necessary to change the rules because
mm-hmm.
I'm just happy. Yeah, I'm happy just going in with everybody else. I don't think I can understand why some people may not like it because it is different and it's not like for like.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are so many different disciplines, even in the longboarding, like the setups
Very
so
true.
different
Very
that
true.
people ride. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that about it. I like going. If everyone was riding the same board,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be fairer, but
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be as interesting. I love watching people go by with some boards are just massive, some boards are tiny. Some have got the paddles, which are great. What I loved about the Miami one
Mm-hmm.
was the inline and quad skaters just added that extra dynamic to it, which just made it quite interesting to see in the different disciplines. Of course, you've got to keep it relatively fair, so
Mm-hmm.
you can't stray too far away.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm never. No one's in danger of me winning the ultra skater, that's for sure.
Cool.
So it's fine.
Awesome. So if there is a new skater who is about to do snakeboarding, So, do you advise him or her to, mail the people who are conducting these Ultraskate events before, well in advance, to participate in it, or like it's okay, like they will be accepted from now on after your?
I think it, yeah, I think it's worthwhile messaging
Oh yeah.
because although you could say, well, if they let me do it, they'll let
Mm-hmm.
other people do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if 20 odd snakeboarders suddenly descended, that might be a bit different to just one person. I mean, it's not going to happen.
I
Let's be
understand.
honest, because no, I don't know anybody else because there
Yeah,
is
that's
a
true.
community. There is a community around streetboarding,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody else rides them like I ride them, which is a shame. They're all just kind of in the park, or they do very short distances of say 5k. So yeah, I don't think we're in any danger of an influx of snakeboarders hitting the ultras.
Okay. So, did it raise any bros in the Altoskate Miami event? Like, what comments did you receive? Have you had any chance to talk to the people while, Uh,
Yeah, I mean that's one of the great things about the ultras is that you've got the build up before. So as I say, a lot of people. I mean, it's funny when I first kind of put my board together, and then you're testing it before the race,
mm-hmm.
and you could just see people like, "What on earth is that thing?" Um, most people I speak to are great. Like they're just, as I said earlier, they're just fascinated by what it
Awesome.
is and how it works. I'm sure there must be a few negative comments out there because you're always going to get the purists in anything in
Yeah.
life. And I know I heard a few negative comments about like the inline skaters, so I'm sure there must be some negativity. But on the whole, everyone is just great, and it's brilliant at an ultra because you're going around the track for so long
Oh,
that you strike up conversations with people as you're going round. So
yeah.
it's really good to chat to people, and as I said, it's a good conversation starter because people just want to know more about it.
Super cool. That's awesome. I'm glad that people kind of stayed inclusive with the new idea. That's really awesome, actually.
Yeah, most people think I'm mad because you can only pump like your feet never leave the board. So
Yeah.
and I think it looks like it takes a lot more effort than it actually does. So
Yeah.
yeah, most people just think I'm crazy for riding riding such a long time on a snakeboard.
Well, that's brilliant, actually. That's what I would say because I've tried something like that. So, and sir, I want to congratulate on your 250 kilometers ride on your very first Dutch Ultra Skate event, and kindly share us about your wonderful experience of Dutch Ultra Skate event.
Yeah, I mean the Dutch one is great. I was nervous going into it because I'd never done anything like that before. The furthest I'd ever gone in one go was 100k.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, I've got no one to kind of benchmark against to know
Yeah.
what's capable on these type of boards. So
Yeah.
I was a little bit nervous, but everyone was super friendly. So once you get a couple of laps in and you
Mm-hmm.
settle into it,
Mm-hmm.
then I just enjoyed the whole thing. It was just
Awesome.
really good fun from start to end.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic community. The Dutch one very well organised. So yeah, it was really good and it went well. It was better than I was expecting. I thought it was going to be harder than it actually was.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, apart from when it rained for 8 or 9 hours non-stop. Other than that,
Yeah.
it was a fantastic event.
Actually, were you prepared for all those things? Have you read about Dutch Ultra Skate and?
Yeah, yes and no. So I
Uh-huh.
was quite well. I was well prepared for the things that I could plan for because
Mm-hmm.
I'd done my research. It's a good time of year, end of June, because in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
once you get to kind of March time, it gets lighter in the evenings so that you can skate after work and get the training in. The
Mm-hmm.
weather's nicer.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of training up to June. So I felt quite good going into the event.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's things that you can't plan for. So one of the things that really impacted me, I had a good pace for the first kind of 8 9 hours because the weather was great.
Mm-hmm.
When it started raining, that wasn't so much of a problem. But after a couple of hours, I started having problems with my board
Mm-hmm.
because on these dragon boards,
Mm-hmm.
you can see that the foot plates are very close together.
Yeah.
So after a couple of hours, the wood absorbed a bit of water,
Oh.
and it made the foot plates really tight.
Oh.
So I was having to put in more effort whilst
Oh.
going slower.
I
So,
understand.
and that was my fault really, because I should have thought about that, and maybe it's very easy to waterproof wood, so I could have done that and made it easier. And that's one of the reasons I kind of, for the Miami one, I switched to the older snakeboard, because you don't have that problem.
Yeah.
It's there's no this is made out of a type of nylon, so
Mm-hmm.
it's super strong, so it can't absorb water and expand. So yeah, that was a mistake on my part that I didn't plan for. And then just little things like I had changes of clothes,
Mm-hmm.
just but I'd left them in the bottom of my bag in a tent. So when it was pitch black, it's raining, trying to you're soaking wet, trying to go through your bag to get all your stuff ready, but to
Mm-hmm.
get changed into was
Mm-hmm.
was a mistake. I should have used the changing room, just hung everything up ready to go, so I could just quickly
Yeah.
nip in,
Yeah.
get changed. I didn't take a towel, so
Oh.
that yeah, well, I meant to, but I forgot it, so that wasn't ideal. Just trying to dry yourself off when you're soaked.
Oh.
I only had one pair of skate shoes; they were soaked through, so I
Oh.
just had to keep using those. So there's little mistakes that I made, but things like nutrition I got right. I always had good energy levels.
Cool.
Hydration
Cool.
was right.
Mm.
So yeah, generally it went quite well for my first ultra.
Awesome.
Unlike
It's quite
unlike
a
the Miami
learning.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Did you carry any spare board? Actually, you had two boards or something like that?
No, just I mean that would be the ideal. I'd love to be able to take two boards. So the
Cool.
old snake board, the newer dragon boards. So then
Mm-hmm.
I've got, because they both have advantages and disadvantages over each other.
Mm-hmm.
But because I'm on an island
I
and I have to
understand.
fly, so
Yeah.
I'm limited as to what I could take.
Yeah,
Because
I
I
understand.
really wanted to take these wheels to Miami
Yeah, yeah.
to try a few laps with those, but I just didn't have the space or the weight capacity. So
I
you've got to be
understand.
very selective on what you take, unfortunately.
I understand. I understand. Did you carry any additional pair of socks or?
Yeah, so I had socks, I had tape like for my feet. I had the KT tape as well. You know the tape that kind of athletes use if they pull a muscle or something. So
Yeah.
I had a fair bit of first aid
Cool.
related stuff just in
Cool.
case
Cool.
things went wrong.
Nice. Nice. Nice.
But I didn't need any of it at the Dutch one. That all went quite well.
Cool.
One top tip I did learn. The only thing that I struggled with, but it was the day after, is
Mm-hmm.
that my toes
Oh.
got rubbed a bit raw.
Ah.
So I ended up losing a toenail.
What?
It didn't impact me during the ride, but it was just the
Whoa.
next day. And I think a lot of that was because my feet were soaking wet. So
Oh.
so what I did for the Miami one is I've got these little silicone sleeves. So
Cool.
I just put it on my toe like that, and
Oh.
then that solved that problem. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that
That's quite
worked.
a learning. That's quite learning. Awesome. So you did not face any chaffing other than that.
No, because you don't. The position that you ride in,
Mm.
you don't get too fatigued, because you're using all your body. So
Yeah.
the movement, the kind of movement you have to put in comes
Yeah.
from the shoulders into the hips, into the legs. So
Yeah.
it's only really your feet that struggle.
Wow.
But my body is absolutely fine.
Cool.
My feet and Miami killed me, to be honest. But the Dutch one went surprisingly well. Miami went surprisingly bad. So I wasn't expecting how tough that was going to be, because it just killed my feet.
Oh.
I think the coming from the UK, we're not
Uh.
known for our hot weather,
Uh.
and the hot weather didn't bother me.
Mm.
I was fine with that, but in terms of overheating, but my feet were swelling up. The heat just made my feet swell,
Oh.
which put pressure, because my feet were just bigger in my trainer.
Oh.
And then in Miami, you've got the first two corners is
Mm.
quite rough. It's quite rough tarmac,
Mm-hmm.
and they're also uphill a bit, so you've got to put
Yeah,
a
it's
bit more effort
curved for the
into.
track. Yeah.
And the problem I think I was experiencing with my slightly swollen feet and the vibration from the track, one of
Mm-hmm.
the downsides of a snakeboard is, yeah, my feet never come off the board.
Yeah.
So I never have a break from the vibration.
Yeah.
In the Dutch one, the track's smooth all the way around. So there's not much
It's all
vibration at
flat
all.
ground. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's very little vibration, so it wasn't a problem. But
Mm-hmm.
Miami, swollen feet, vibration. A couple of hours in, I was really starting to struggle,
Oh.
which I was not prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the other thing as well with slightly swollen feet is that I use Dragon's toe hooks. So these
Oh.
hooks here,
Yeah.
you don't need these, but I
Oh.
think they really help just keep your feet
Yeah.
in the right position.
Yeah.
And I think with my swollen feet, where I ride, the the toe hook was starting to dig
Oh.
into the top of my foot.
Oh.
So I was hurting on the bottom, I was hurting on the side, and I
Oh.
was really I didn't I've never had that before,
Okay.
and it was a real challenge. So in the end, I had to actually start riding in my sandals. So
Oh.
which which worked out really well because so I rode in these.
Pretty cool for Miami, like.
Yeah, and but they work really well because they're nice thick foam, so that got rid of the vibration.
Awesome.
And then where the toe hook
Uh-huh.
was kind of sit, well,
Oh,
had
yeah.
this nice padding, so it worked out perfectly.
That's
So I ended
awesome.
up I rode 100 miles in these things,
That's
so
awesome.
that's probably a first.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so if I hadn't have had those, I would have really struggled. So yeah, that was something I'm going to have to try and fix if I do Miami again.
Cool. Probably a Crocs could help.
But yeah, it could be. I think just maybe just a bigger trainer. I think
Ah,
it was like just a size up, mate, or half a size up, just in case my feet swell in the heat again.
I
Then I've
understand.
just got that extra room because I tried all sorts of things. I tried stopping and taping my feet up.
I
That
understand.
made it worse because it was even more pressure.
I understand.
Um, so because I unlike longboarding, I have quite a different requirement for shoes
Mm-hmm.
because my feet because they never leave the board. So
Mm-hmm.
I was riding in these because
Mm-hmm.
the sole's thicker.
Cool.
Also, the thicker leather
Mm.
helps with my feet up against the toe hook.
Yeah.
I need something a bit thicker, but I
Mm-hmm.
think also because my feet had swollen, it was just putting too much pressure on
I
my feet.
understand.
So
I understand.
I need to sort that out for next time.
I totally like your approach and thought that you put in for your riding and all that. My question was about to transcend to Ultraskate Miami 2023, but we already did. That's awesome. So I want to first congratulate on you for doing 150 miles, which is just 8.6 kilometers short of Dutch Ultraskate. But that's totally okay because both had totally a different temperature, working weather for you. And
Yeah.
there was little bit of rain in Miami around 3 a.m. in the morning, I guess.
Yeah, I missed that luckily because
Oh,
I got to, as I say, I was really struggling
uh-huh.
for the first 50 miles, which I hadn't planned for.
Oh,
I lost a lot of time trying to because I tried a different pair of shoes that worked
mm,
for a bit, and then I was
mm,
getting pain again.
mm,
And then once I switched to the flip flops,
mm.
I then started to try and make time back up, and I went a bit too fast.
Oh,
So by the time I got to 150, there was still about 3.5 hours to go when I got
oh,
to 150. But
uh-huh.
I'd kind of wore myself out at that point.
Oh,
And then it rained, the track was wet, and I thought, do you know what? I'm happy with 150. I'll just leave it there. I just went to the bathroom, washed myself off, and then just kind of chilled and
oh.
watched all the other races carried on. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I certainly could have done a bit more, but I was spent by that point, I think. So it
That's
didn't
great,
go
actually.
particularly as well as I'd had hoped, but I've learned. So
Yeah,
better
it's
next
quite a
time.
learning, actually. You listen to your body, like you did not push it to the extreme and got
Well,
exhausted.
yeah. The other thing as well is that coming all the way from the UK, I was also mindful that I needed to be able to walk the next
Mm,
day. So
yeah,
I didn't want to push myself too far because it's not like I could just then go home.
yeah.
I had to then travel to Miami to a hotel, and I was there for a few days. So thankfully, I woke up the next day and I was absolutely fine, and was then able to do a 20-mile skate around Miami the next day. So yeah, I didn't want to push myself too hard and
Okay.
ruin the rest of the time I had in Florida.
Okay, cool. There was one particular time where a power went off in Ultraskate Miami 2023. Were you riding by then?
Yeah, yeah, and that was not good.
Did you carry your lights?
So there was just a section
Uh,
where I think the lights just weren't working, and typically it was on the worst section for that to happen because
oh,
there's a really nice downhill bit, and
uh-huh,
it's the only bit on the track, and you can get up some good speed,
uh-huh.
but getting up speed when it's pitch black is was not ideal, and I was particularly worried because
Yeah,
I was riding in these things.
yeah.
They were very comfortable, but I was always a bit wary. If I fall off, if I come
Oh,
off, I'm going to trip over, or they're going to go flying. I'll cut my feet. So
oh,
every time I went through that dark section,
oh.
I was scared that that was going to happen.
That
But
was thrilling.
thankfully, it didn't. I managed to do the 100 miles in those without falling off. So yeah, but that was not ideal.
I understand. Cool. That was a great approach. But anyways, you ate up all the anxiety and kind of withstood the whatever that was happening to you by surprise. That's great. I appreciate. I appreciate it. So, like, how did you draft your Ultraskate Miami track? You know, like as in learning the track, where to ride, when not to pump, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly lines on the track which are easier than others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had to be a bit careful because you've got the inline skaters and the speeds those guys go. I
Oh,
mean, they're insane. They are really
yeah,
quick, and they tended to take the best lines.
yeah.
So you didn't really want to take some lines because you think, okay, well, I don't want to get in their way. So
Oh,
um, yeah, I mean, I just for the first couple of laps, I just followed the lines that other people were doing.
mm,
But generally, like you've got two. If you think it's an oval, the
mm,
two straights are brilliant. They're really nice and smooth. You can get some
mm-hmm,
good speed.
mm-hmm.
It's just the first two corners which are quite a challenge. And there's no line you can really take to avoid
Okay.
the roughness or the hill. But yeah, there's parts of the track which is a bit better than others, but not enough to really worry about it too much.
Cool. That's amazing. You kind of figured it out in first two laps itself. That's amazing. Totally appreciate it.
You get very familiar with that track after going around it 100 times. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I totally get it. That's awesome. That's awesome. So like how did you plan your strategy as in like with Dutch as well as Ultraskate Miami? You were going by pace or like you were going by laps? Like I want to keep
Um,
this speed consistent or like you want to count laps for your
yeah, I mean, I didn't try to overthink it because it was the first one that I'd done. Like the Dutch one is the first one I'd done. So
mm-hmm,
nobody's done one on a snakeboard before, so I didn't really know what was capable. So I started at the back of the pack
mm-hmm,
because one thing with a snakeboard is that you start from a standing position, so you get on the board and
mm-hmm,
then you start the movement.
mm-hmm,
So it's a little bit slower off the mark
mm-hmm.
compared to longboarders. So
Yeah.
I stayed at the back so I didn't get in anyone's way. And
Mm-hmm,
then I thought, right, first couple of laps, I'll just take it easy. And then as time went on, I started to increase the speed. So I was always doing, at one point, I was averaging probably 11 miles an hour.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes I push it and go up to 12.
mm-hmm,
And then at the Dutch one, the rain hit.
mm-hmm,
And to start with, as I said, it was fine. So I was still maintaining a similar pace. But then when I started having problems with the board, I
mm-hmm.
probably dropped down to more like nine miles an hour.
Wow.
But I always wanted to kind of just stay around 10. But if I stay around 10, have a few breaks, I'll get to at least 100. But it went quite well. And in some ways, the rain did help because I was soaked.
Oh.
If I stopped, I got cold.
Oh.
So it just forced me to keep going through the night because if I stopped, I was just so soaking wet.
Oh.
I thought I just got cold, so I just kept going. So other than that, I didn't have too much of a strategy. I was just kind of happy just to be there and
Oh.
give it a go.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and then the Miami one, again, not so much of as a strategy, but I did kind of think, right, well, I've done 150.
Mm.
I did that with an hour and a half to go at the Dutch Ultra
Mm-hmm.
with the rain, so I could probably get 200 here.
Mm-hmm.
But just a couple of hours in, I knew that was never going to happen because
Oh.
I was struggling. The wind, like the heat, didn't bother me at all,
Oh,
apart from
okay.
my feet. It didn't bother me, but the wind did.
Oh,
So there was a bit of a wind, and that
headwinds.
was, yeah, that was brutal because it just cost you speed. So when that died down at night, you could go so much faster.
Mm.
So yeah, no particular plan. Again, I was just going to try and stick around 10 miles an hour and see what happened. But yeah, unfortunately, the Miami was a lot tougher than I was expecting.
Yeah, I can totally understand. Even Jeff Wayne from Pantheon Boards, the owner of Pantheon Boards, he also hurt his toe because of the weather and all that, you know. So,
Yeah,
I understand. This Miami was a little tougher for many. Have had
yeah,
Yeah, please,
and I
please.
was I was unsupported as well. At the Dutch one, I had a friend with me, and they were great because they could hand me the odd thing or get stuff sorted for me.
Mm.
But at the Miami one, I was on my own, so I was having
Oh,
to I was having to think a bit more about what I was carrying with me. So
wow.
I had to carry, especially because it was so hot. I had to carry more water on my back
Yeah.
because I couldn't. There was no one to kind of hand me water, and
Oh,
so that doesn't make too much of a difference. But every little weight you can avoid, I guess, kind of helps. But yeah, it's
oh, I
fine.
totally appreciate the effort because like doing it all alone is that's not simple thing actually. You know, that's actually inspiring because you're on your own. You've been that's the weight on your head actually. Stress on your mind, you know. That's incredible. Like, were you using all the free lunch served by Skate Ideas here, or like you prepped your meals one day before, or how did you?
So I didn't. I had the dinner because I think they did like a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I
Mm-hmm.
had some of the dinner, but I didn't have any of the other stuff because firstly, I'd lost too much time trying to sort my feet out, so I didn't want to
Oh.
lose even more time stopping to eat, and
Mm.
I didn't want to eat anything too heavy because I was just kind of sticking with kind of protein bars and energy bars, things like that, just to keep me going. Because that worked well at the Dutch one and seemed to work pretty well at the Miami one. And
Mm.
then I had some like electrolyte tablets to drop in my
Mm. Mm.
water that was
Yeah.
on my back.
Yeah.
So I just had to stop every so often to refill my water.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, they also had ice as well, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. So I just chucked a load of ice in my camel pack, put a tablet in. Sometimes I'll put like a dissolvable paracetamol in as well,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, and then good to go again.
Cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. Sure, like I could totally admire your riding videos, you know, on your Instagram where you cruise through UK roads, the toughness that it puts through. And how did that kind of training and everything helped you in the distance skating or in ultra
It
skate events?
Yeah, it helps a lot. It helps a lot. That's one thing. I think that's why the Dutch one in particular went quite well because I did
Oh,
feel a bit fitter going into the Dutch one than I did the Miami
oh.
because at the time of year I just was able to do more skating.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, in the build up to Miami, unfortunately, I got COVID at the end of December.
Oh,
I injured my shoulder a little bit snowboarding in December, so
whoa.
I couldn't train quite as hard as I wanted to.
Oh,
But when you do train in the UK, there's a lot of hills, so you're going uphill.
oh,
It takes more effort to go across tougher terrain.
yeah.
So five k in the UK
Hmm.
feels more like 20 when you're going around
Flat
the
grounds. Yeah.
yeah, like when it's super smooth. It just feels so much easier. So it does help training on paths which aren't great.
That's awesome. Uphill is a totally different game. That's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah, uphill's fine. It's the downhill you've got to worry about.
yeah. Oh, like how do you slide? How do you brake? Do you use gloves? Downhill kind of glove?
No, I mean to be honest, it depends on where you are because if you're on a path
Mm-hmm.
and it's average path is what 2 meters wide,
Yeah.
that's absolutely fine because these boards you can steer from the front and the back.
No.
So and there's such a tight turning circle.
Yeah.
when you're on a particularly steep section, you can just snake down it very easily.
Ah,
The
yes, curve.
problem only comes, yeah, the problem only comes if the path is really narrow and you don't have that space.
Oh,
Or sometimes I've ridden on the side of a road
oh,
where the road's only like half a meter away or a meter, and you
oh.
don't have enough space to scrub the speed,
I get
and
it.
you can't foot brake
Oh,
because you're sideways facing.
yeah.
If you get to a point where you don't have quite enough space to snake your speed down,
Oh,
you've just got to go for it. You just got to hope for the best.
oh.
So that could
That's
be a bit
quite
scary.
thrilling.
Yeah, because I don't have the luxury of being able to foot brake. So
Oh, yeah,
yeah, that can be a bit scary at times. But generally speaking, it's fine because you usually have enough space.
yeah. Awesome. Thanks. That's quite a learning, actually. I never thought about that narrow braking and downhill, doing downhill in a narrow space, actually. Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's same thing with longboarding. It can be a bit scary if you're on a narrow section, but at least you can kind of put your foot down and
Yeah,
slow yourself down.
yeah. That's awesome. So, have you tried alto skates? Have you heard about alto skates?
I've not tried it. No,
Okay.
I've seen them. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's just another street board.
Mm-hmm.
So the only real difference is that these boards, along with the normal street boards,
Mm-hmm.
they've got limited motion, so it'll
Oh,
only
yeah.
go so far, and that's all you need. You
Oh,
don't need
yeah.
to go any more than that.
Hmm.
Whereas the Ultra, as I understand, rotate
Yeah.
360.
Yeah.
I don't really know why that would be a benefit. Um, but other than that, it's exactly the same principle. So I'm sure I could just immediately get on one and ride it in the same way. But I've not tried it. No.
Okay. Okay. The Dragon boat seem to have some, like fiberglass trucks, while the other one has aluminum trucks. Like, how do you find the difference
Yeah.
to be useful for your rides?
Weight. Yeah. So as I say, there's pros and cons between the two boards. So
Mm.
the older snake board is actually slightly faster
Mm-hmm.
because the center bar, it's nylon, so it's got a bit of flex to it.
Oh,
And that bit of flex means you can just generate a little bit more power. Not much, but enough that you can
gives you
go a
some
bit
traction.
faster. Yeah. Whereas the Dragon
Torsion.
boards,
Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, they're good for that. The Dragon boards are a lot more stable at speed because they're a
Oh.
bit wider.
Oh.
They're also much light. So even though it looks to be a far bigger board than it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
it's actually much lighter. So that's that, and yeah, it's just a lot more stable at speed, but it's not as quick and not as easy to slow down on either because you don't have that same
Yeah.
flex.
Yeah.
And then yeah, they need for distance skating they just need waterproofing as well, which you don't have to worry about.
Yeah. How do you compare your Highland Flare 55 board to Dragon board, freestyle board, or cruiser board to your snake board?
So I mean, all the street boards are pretty much the same.
Okay.
They perform. The difference is though that the newer Dragon boards they are lighter, so they are a bit quicker.
Mm-hmm.
They use slightly different parts, so they are a lot more reliable.
Mm-hmm.
Because other than the problem I had in the rain, the other thing I love about both the snakeboard and the streetboard is
Mm-hmm.
the maintenance is non-existent.
Mm.
They last forever. I mean that board's 30 years old.
Super cool.
Um, it's never going to break on you. The only problem you're going to get is the wheels.
Oh.
So that's which can happen on any board. But and the simplicity is what I also like because it blows my mind when I see all these questions about 0 degree angles or 15 degrees like on these longboards, which to me means nothing because I don't know anything about longboarding.
Oh.
Whereas like the boards I ride, no maintenance, you just put on big wheels and go.
Awesome.
That's the only thing you've got to worry about. So I do like that simplicity. But they're all generally perform the same.
Mm.
So Dragon's definitely the best in class because
Mm.
they're newer, they're new on the scene. They're designed by the best street boarders in the world.
Mm.
So yeah, I do like their boards. They're good.
That's cool. Thank you. Thank you. Sir, have you tried the JMQ Ride freeline skates, or like, in other words, drift skates?
I have, yes. I used to
Awesome.
own a pair
Oh.
because because it's a very similar movement to a
Yeah.
snakeboard.
Yeah.
The only difference is you don't have the bar in the
Yeah.
middle, and also, unlike a snake or a street board, there's no heel to toe movement on
Yeah.
on a snakeboard, whereas
Yeah.
on free skates there is. So you've got that additional dynamic.
Awesome.
So they're good fun, and they're great, like, because they're so small,
Mm.
and you don't, unlike normal roller skates, you don't have to put them on your feet. You can just get on them. So they're really good, but ultimately they didn't quite work for me just because of the speed and stability. So I
Mm-hmm.
found,
I lost you for a second. Your video got paused.
hello, so I lost you
Hello.
there.
I'm so sorry. I did not know what
That's okay.
happened. Yeah. For a moment, there was no feed from your side, and then mine also totally, completely got disconnected. I'm totally
Yeah,
sorry for the
same my
mishap
end.
if it was, you know. It was not anything intentional, it just happened.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's technology for you.
Thank you. Thanks for understanding. So, we were talking about JMK, freelance skates.
Yeah, so I don't know how much of that you heard, but yeah, I did have a pair, and they are very similar.
Uh huh.
But ultimately, I didn't get on with them as well as a skateboard because of the speed,
Mm-hmm.
and stability.
Mm-hmm.
So because you can get some good speed on them. Don't get me wrong, but you can only fit like 65, 70 mil wheels on them, and
Mm-hmm.
that's as big as you can go.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on the snakeboard, you can go much bigger than that, which is, so they're a little bit more stable and a bit quicker, just better suited for longer distance. But yeah, they're good.
Cool.
They're very unique. It'd be great to see someone at an ultra on a pair of those. See what they can do. That'd be
That's
great.
awesome. Yeah, even I wish that. Actually, there were a couple of enthusiasts from Brazil. They kind of tried to design a freelance skate with bigger platform for cruising, especially with bigger wheels. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, due to the pattern issues, they couldn't do it. It was during my early stages when I observed and Googled about it in 2019. I learned them, but it'll be cool to have one of those on a distance skating scene.
Yeah, they'd probably do quite well. It'd be very interesting to see how they'd get on.
Yeah, yeah. So, sir, what kind of cross training you would recommend for distance skating, like for what you do?
So for what I do, I mean, any
Mm-hmm.
cardio based activities always going to help. So running. A lot of what I do comes. So it's all parts of your body. So I tend to do a lot of high intense interval training.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps with the cardio, but also with the muscle strength as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I mean, cardio running is going to be good. For me, a lot of the movement comes from the thighs and the lower back. So if I'm going to have problems with anything, it's going to be my lower back, the
Oh.
constant kind of twist in motion.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had problems with my legs; they never get tired or
Cool.
anything else.
Cool.
Yeah, just running, free weights, anything you can do really. Cycling would be a good one because you're using your thigh muscles a lot. So
That's awesome.
yeah, anything.
Cool. So, like, would you prefer a ski board with dragon board kind of style, freestyle board?
Well, it's funny you should say that because I've got a box of my skateboarding stuff here,
Uh
and I
huh.
do have these.
Oh.
So these are little skis that replace the wheels. So
Oh.
technically, I've already ridden a snakeboard on the snow, and
That's awesome.
you can't propel yourself along because you just can't get enough traction. But on a bit
Yeah.
of a slope,
Oh.
it's great fun, but it's also not really necessary because
Yeah.
if you've, because bearing in mind what I said earlier, so snakeboards were designed to copy snowboarding
Oh, yeah.
on the street.
Yeah.
So why would you then want to take a copy and put that onto the snow?
Yeah.
You might as well just snowboard.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to have something specifically designed for that because of
Yeah.
the smaller boards and the movement. It would be interesting. And having tried the skis, it does work surprisingly well.
Because this question came to me when I saw a pair of freelance skates with a skiing shoes, like it had
Right.
that blades on, you know. They were trying it on the hockey ice skate grounds. So I thought, like, why not something available for Dragon? And if you had tried something, that's where. Okay.
Yeah, well, the other thing as well that I've also got are these. Now, these do work very, very well. These are little ice
Oh,
skates.
yeah, there's something like this. Yeah.
So, yeah, so you take your wheels off, put those on. Now, because, I mean, you could use these on a longboard, no problem. I
Oh.
don't think they make these. I've had these for years. I don't think they make them anymore. But there is
Mm-hmm.
another brand. There's a brand out there called, Ice Longboard. No, what are they called? Ice. I can't remember now, but there's some brand that's come along in the last year or so that have been making these, and I've seen a few longboarders using kites on lakes.
Oh.
But on a skateboard they work particularly well because of the self-propelled motion,
Oh.
and you're not having to pump, and you don't have to, or push rather, so you're not having to worry about the traction. They work just as well on the snow, on the ice,
Oh, this is amazing.
as it does on the pavement. So it's unfortunately I don't get being in the UK, I don't get too many opportunities to try it out, but it certainly does work when I've tried it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Actually, I never heard about kite surfing with blades on. That's amazing. I've seen a surf skate with such blades, but kite surfing is awesome. Thanks for sharing that news. Awesome, sir. Have you suggested anything from the learnings that you had doing long distance skating to dragon boards or Uh,
Yeah, so I have, and it's something that
cool.
hopefully they're going to look into for me because I guess what I'd do, because they do a cruiser board which I do own,
Oh.
and that's a fantastic board, but it's also quite short
Mm-hmm.
because they're designed really for going going to your shops or going around a city or town centre, so they're a little bit shorter
Mm-hmm.
to make them more portable, but
Mm-hmm.
also to make them more manoeuvrable. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
going through crowds of people,
Mm-hmm.
so they're brilliant for what they're designed for.
Mm-hmm.
But for long distance, I've tried to ride them long distance, and it just takes a little bit more effort to ride them because the shorter wheelbase just means you're having to wiggle it a
Yeah.
bit more.
Yeah.
So ideally, I'd want one of those a bit longer, so the same length as their normal kind of freestyle boards,
Uh,
and then just it waterproofed the wood, so it's not going to absorb any moisture. I think that would be the ideal setup.
cool.
So it's something I've spoken to them about. Hopefully they'll hook me up one day.
Cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's a news for the audience. We're going to watch this video and learn from it. That's awesome. So, sir, have you tried installing any studs to your bigger wheels and try ride your board on your on the ice when it is cold out there?
No, because in the UK it doesn't get that cold that we
Okay.
have to do that.
Okay.
I mean, we've had a fairly cold winter, but the paths are never gonna freeze over to that extent. And
Mm-hmm.
then if I was to ride on ice, well, then I'd use these things. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, studded
Definitely. Yeah.
wheels
Makes sense.
just not something that I'd really need in this country.
Cool. Thanks. So, have you tried any surfing? As in like in the ocean?
Surfing, no.
Okay.
Not surfing because I live right in the middle of the UK, so
Okay.
I'm as far away from the oceans as you could get. So I've just never really had the opportunity
Okay.
to try it. I would love to give it a go, but I have tried wakeboarding. So water skiing but on a
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
I have tried that, which
That's awesome.
it's so similar to snowboarding. I was able to do that straight away. So first go, I was off and I was going around the lake, no problem. So that really snowboarding really transcends into that. That was good fun.
That's awesome. Actually, that's why I came up with this question because snakeboard, wakeboard, and all those things kind of like
Yeah,
transcend and converge into one point somewhere.
I'd imagine surfing is very hard because
Yeah.
you not because you can't just you're going to fall off straight away, and
Uh,
then you can't just get back on and try again. You've got to wait for the wave. So I imagine it's really difficult surfing, but it does look really cool.
awesome. Awesome. So, sir, I guess we have come to the end of our interview. I think I have put forth everything that I've learned. I thought of asking you, and my questions were coming from the your feeds of Endurance Snaker Instagram ID. Guess that's the questions that I had. And if you have any good message that you want to share to the distance skating community or people who are adapting to your snakeboard in the future, please go ahead. The device is
Yeah, I mean,
yours.
to the longboarding community, I'd just say thank you because I feel like I've been adopted into the sport because I've got a different board, but everyone's been so welcoming into the community despite not really being a longboarder.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you to everyone particularly at the Ultraskates,
Mm-hmm.
the organisers for letting me take part, everybody that I spoke to, or even if it's just something as simple as people will skate past and give you the thumbs up, everything like that when you're trying to do such a long distance is really helpful. So I'm just grateful for everybody's support.
Cool, cool. Dutch Ultraskate 2023 is not happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a real shame. Typical. I do my first one and then it doesn't happen again. So because I was really looking forward to that, but
there's
I
going to be
understand why.
Misfits and Flaming Runde after that. So would you be appearing in
Yeah,
the scene?
I will definitely do the Misfits one. I missed out last year because I
Uh,
was away on holiday with family, so I missed out unfortunately.
mm,
The Flaming Wound, yeah, I was talking to a guy in Miami, I think one of the organisers, and he was asking me to come
uh,
along. So yeah, that sounds like a challenge because there's hills involved, but yeah, I'll probably try and give that one a go this year as well.
cool. That's amazing. That's a news for us, actually. That's awesome. So, since you were mentioning about talking to few people, can you recollect few names who you have spoken to in Dutch Ultraskate and Ultraskate
Oh,
Miami?
oh God, now you're putting me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there's too many to really mention.
All right.
I mean, one guy that always makes me laugh is Barney.
Uh-huh.
And it was funny because the day after the ultra, I travelled from the Homestead track into
Mm-hmm.
Miami and
Mm-hmm.
had a couple of days there just as a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And I skated all the way down the
Mm-hmm.
beach. And as I was going back, I saw this longboarder coming towards me, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, there's a longboarder. Oh, it's Barney." So we stopped and
Oh,
had a quick chat. But I mean, everyone's great. There's so many good characters in the sport. I don't know all of their names either, but yeah, there's some really nice people, a really good community.
cool. It was pleasure talking to you, sir. Quite a learning for me, and I wish all good for you and in the future in 2023 as well. So
And to you too, yeah, to you
yeah, it
too.
was incredible to interact with you. Thanks for giving your valuable time to us. Nandri, this is the way we say it. Thank you in my Tamil
Andre,
language. Yeah, best wishes. Yeah,
yeah, to you too. Great talking to you.
yeah, sure.
Keep up the good work. I really enjoy your videos, so keep it going.
Thank you. Thank you so much.